All right. Well, next up is another cool feature from Google, and it is for anybody that's a podcaster out there. What is that? But
I don't know.
Who is
the,
she?
the Google
I don't listen to any.
Webmasters. Nobody should,
Especially not ours.
But the Google Webmasters Twitter account put out a tweet saying Google search is an important and growing way to find podcasts. Today, we're introducing a new feature to help podcasters understand how listeners discover their content on search. And you can sign up for Podcast Manager by going to podcastmanager.google.com. And the new thing that you are now able to see with this upgrade is the impressions that show in search and the clicks that you get over to your podcast on Google Podcasts. So you always could see the length of time that people were listening and what episodes were performing better on Podcast Manager. You now can see that search data. And well, it's cool. Like, couldn't you put that in Search Console too somehow? Like, I feel like this could tie in a Search Console or something. But we have some notes from some listeners. So first up, we are going to go to Christoph Trapp, and he has a voicemail for us here today.
Hey team, it's Christoph Trapp, C-Trapp on Twitter. I want to comment on the Podcast Manager improvement that Barry Schwartz reported on. And basically, it's so great to see that you can now see directly in Podcast Manager how your podcast is ranking, how it's showing up, what people are clicking on, what they're searching for. Another example why companies really need to get in the podcast game if they're not yet. Keep up the good work.
And you can listen to Christoph over on authenticstorytelling.net. And he has his own podcast, Business Storytelling Podcast. And while he thinks it's great, I do too. I just am a little disheartened because we don't have any traffic from Google search. And the minute this was introduced, we got all hooked up and set up our podcast on Google Podcasts. But we have ridiculous titles that we write for you, the listener, not for Google, the search engine. And we barely get any traffic. You can see our stats over on YouTube. But if you actually have, like, I think a good example of, if you listen to the bonus episode, the previous episode of this, AJ Wilcox LinkedIn show actually ranks really, really well for anything to do with LinkedIn podcast. And I'd imagine for folks that have a very specific niche podcast, there's going to be a lot of volume that could be had there. So this could be really cool. And we also have another message from Azim Digital.
Hey guys, it's Azim here. Just wanted to drop you a quick voicemail to talk to you about Google Podcast Manager. As a podcaster, I think this is absolutely great because now what I can do is I can go in, see which search terms brought people to my podcast, what episodes they're listening to, how long they're listening to it for. And as a podcaster, it will allow me to better serve my audience, some of whom I hope are hosts on your show. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I'd be really keen to see what you guys think about it because I am a super huge fan of this update. And already I've got several ideas ticking around in my head, but I'd love to hear what you guys think about it.
All right. And thanks, Azim. And you can check out Azim over at iamazimdigital.com or in the show notes. And he has the Azim Digital Asks podcast. And yes, we do listen. I heard episode 16, I believe, with Andrea Cruz.
Yeah, Andrea was on it.
Power listener. And she even talked about us. So yeah, we listen, Azim. But just another thing of note, you can see the average time played, the length, when things were published. But again, it's only for people using Google Podcasts. And that's not a whole lot of people. It's quite frankly not the best platform out there. And if you really want to see data on your users, I'd recommend using Spotify's solution. So like, who the heck is listening on Google Podcasts? Spotify to us is substantially more. And, you know, if Apple had a good analytics platform, that'd be nice. But, you know, I think Spotify makes up 7% of our traffic overall. And the coolest thing about Spotify analytics is you can see the length and when people drop off and everything, but you can also see what people that listen to the show also listen to. And I've got 3 items here, and you have to tell me what's real and what's fake. Okay, so what do people listen to on the show? Post Malone, Eminem, Kesha, Ed Sheeran. Which one of those is fake?
I think Kesha, because you want us to guess that because Mark's here.
Okay.
I know, but I also feel that because only like 7% of our listeners come from Spotify, and I usually listen on Spotify, that my Kesha might be real. Because I could be throwing it off.
Okay, so what is the fake one? Eminem, Post Malone, Kesha, or Ed Sheeran?
Eminem's also such a throwback. Who's listening to Eminem all the time today? I'm going with Kesha.
Okay.
I'm going with Eminem.
Shep is right.
Okay.
We have a lot of Eminem listeners, apparently. Like, what is this?
I was trying to believe that you weren't just teasing me. I had too much faith in you.
No, I figured it was so blatantly erroneous that, you know, it might look good. That was my thought, but it didn't.
Yeah, I thought you were trying to be nice.
Well, anyway, if you want to see your podcast demographics, what they're listening to, where they're located from Spotify, you can also check that out. And I think it's better than what Google's offering. So that is podcasters.spotify.com. So podcasters, plural.spotify.com.
Like what you saw? Of course you did. If you're looking for more, Marketing O'Clock releases new episodes every Friday with the digital marketing news of the week. You can subscribe wherever you consume your podcasts, or click to watch the full episode, the next news story, or read all the articles from the show.